SpaceX has pulled off its boldest test flight yet of its enormous Starship rocket, catching the returning booster back at the launch pad with mechanical arms.
Soon, a tower the size of a skyscraper will fall from orbit at 25 times the speed of sound and try to stop dead between two metal arms. No one has ever done it. That maneuver is the single hardest recovery anyone has ever attempted in the history of rocketry, and the company behind it says it is coming on one of the very next flights. But here is what they are not putting on the poster. They have tried to catch a rocket before, and it has gone wrong. The engines they are depending on just failed in flight 3 weeks ago. And the thing they are about to attempt is so much harder than anything they have pulled off that even their own founder calls part of it the most likely thing to fail. This is the story of the catch. Why it is the hardest in rocket history. Why it is coming anyway. And the very real chance that the first time they try it, it does not work. First, be precise about which catch we mean, because there are two very different ones, and only one is the hard one. Starship flies in two pieces. The booster, the giant lower stage, heaves the stack off the pad, then falls back and is plucked out of the air by two arms on the launch tower. The company has already done that more than once. Those tower arms even have a nickname, the chopsticks. And watching them snatch a booster out of the sky is one of the strangest sights in modern spaceflight. The upper stage, the ship that actually reaches space, has never been caught, not once. And catching it is a different universe of difficulty. The booster comes home from the edge of space at maybe 4 to 6 times the speed of sound, falling more or less straight down. The ship comes home from orbit at 25 times the speed of sound, wrapped in plasma hot enough to melt steel, flying sideways through the air like a falling leaf, before it has to flip upright and hover in the final seconds into the same pair of arms. That catch is the one in the title, and it is the hardest recovery ever attempted. To see why, look at what has already happened. In October of 2024, the company made history. The first time a booster that size was ever caught by a tower. It looked flawless. It was not. Engineers later admitted the vehicle was about 1 second away from a sensor glitch that would have ordered it to abort and smash itself into the ground beside the tower. On the very next flight, the catch was waved off entirely. The booster lost its link to the tower's sensors and diverted out to sea. Then came a run of split decisions. On 2 flights, the booster was caught perfectly, and both times the upper stage was lost on the way up, once to a fire in its tail, once when an engine part let go and the ship spun out and broke apart. On another mission, the company tried reflying a used booster for the first time and pushed it until it exploded over the water. A pair of cleaner flights followed, where both stages came down softly at sea, and on the last of them, the ship even relit an engine in space, a small but vital trick it will need to fly home. And then, in May, came the debut of the newest design, and both stages failed to come home. The takeaway is not that the company is bad at this. It is that catching a rocket is still violent, still volatile, and still goes wrong, even on the part they have supposedly figured out. Now stack the ship catch on top of all that. The booster, for all its size, has the easy job. It separates while still heading mostly upward, flips, and falls back tail first in a stable vertical drop, steering with 4 big fins, its fuel settling neatly at the bottom of the tanks the whole way down. The ship does almost the opposite of everything. It comes screaming back from orbital speed, and to keep from burning up, it turns broadside to the air, a deliberate belly flop, taking the heat across its entire flank, where temperatures reach 1400 degrees Celsius. Then, only a few hundred meters above the ground, it has to light its engines and violently wrench itself from lying flat to standing straight up, killing all that sideways motion and coming to a dead hover. Inside the tanks, the fuel is sloshing like water in a thrown bucket. If the engine so much as stumbled during that flip, there is no parachute, no backup, and no time. 100 tons of steel goes straight into the tower. At this point, a fair question is why attempt something this dangerous at all? Why not just let the ship parachute into the ocean and lift it out with a boat? The answer is the entire reason this rocket exists. Every other rocket in history has thrown its hardware away, or at best fished it out of salt water for a long, expensive rebuild. The whole bet here is a vehicle that flies, lands back on its own tower, and launches again within days. Like an airliner, not a firework. Catching the ship out of the air, clean and dry, is what makes that possible. Splashing down in the ocean is a stepping stone. It proves the ship can survive the trip home. But you cannot build a machine that flies 100 times a year by fishing it out of the sea. The catch is not a stunt, it is the whole point. Which brings us to the first reason this might not work, and it is not hypothetical. The newest design runs on a new generation of engines, lighter, more powerful, with the cooling and plumbing built directly into the metal. On paper, they are a leap forward. In practice, on that flight in May, several of them simply failed to relight when the booster needed them. The exact failure that, on a ship attempting a catch, would be fatal. And it was not only the booster. On that same flight, the upper stage lost one of its own engines on the way up. It clawed its way to space on the ones that were left, but it was one more reminder that these engines are not yet trustworthy when it counts. And the ship makes the problem worse. During the belly flop, the fuel sloshes away from the engine feeds, so the vehicle draws from small reserve tanks tucked in the nose and tail to keep the supply clean. As it snaps upright, the forces shift hard. If the pressure in those reserve tanks dips for even a fraction of a second, the engines starve, the flame dies, and the catch becomes a crash. An early prototype was lost in exactly this way years ago, dropping out of the sky when its tanks could not keep up. The second reason lives on the skin of the ship. Its heat shield is thousands of ceramic tiles, and the company's own founder has pointed to the seams around the moving flaps as the likeliest place for the whole thing to fail. You can armor a flat surface, but you still need a hinge, and a hinge is a gap, and a gap lets in plasma. On earlier flights, that superheated gas chewed through seals and sent sparks streaming off the hull. Lose enough tiles, and the bare steel underneath goes soft, and a softened airframe, yanked to a stop by mechanical arms, can simply tear apart. Then there is the tower itself. The arms have to close around the vehicle with sub-meter precision, and the tolerance is brutal. Across the span of the catch points, a single degree of twist becomes a gap as wide as your hand, enough for one side to slam the arm before the other and wrench the entire structure. So the safety system is deliberately ruthless. If anything looks wrong in the final seconds, a jittery sensor, a sluggish engine, a stuck flap, it will order the vehicle to throw itself away rather than risk the tower. And depending on when that happens, throwing itself away can mean a fireball at the launch site. A single failed catch does not just lose a ship. It can flatten the one tower they launch from. And there is only one. So here is the honest part the title leaves out. The very next flight is almost certainly not the catch. After May's double failure, the engines have to be fixed and proven first, and federal regulators have grounded the program until that investigation closes. Before anyone flies again, the company has to pin down the precise cause of those engine failures, fix it, prove the fix, and get regulators to sign off on a change to its launch license. It has moved fast before. One grounding of its smaller workhorse rocket lasted only days, but these engines are brand new, with almost no flight history to lean on, which can stretch the review out. Regulators could still lift the hold early, as they have for this program before, once they are satisfied the failure does not threaten the public. Either way, the next flight is about answers, not arms. The next booster and the next ship are already being built and tested, with a launch targeted for sometime this summer. But the smart money says that flight ends with both stages splashing down gently in the ocean, not hanging from the tower. The catch is the goal of this stretch of test flights, not a promise for the next one. And one more honesty check while we are here. This will not be the first time anyone has caught a falling rocket. Years ago, a rival company snatched a small booster out of the air with a helicopter and a hook. Decades before that, a national space agency tried the same trick to catch a returning capsule and missed. The capsule slammed into the desert. What makes this the hardest is not that it is a catch. It is that nothing this big has ever flown itself, under its own power, into a pair of waiting arms. That is the record being chased. And the stakes have quietly changed. For years, this was a private company, free to blow things up on its own schedule. As of the middle of June, it is not. It went public, valued at somewhere near $1.8 trillion, with a reported $75 billion raised in a single day. Now, a destroyed launch tower is not just a setback measured in lost months. It is a number on a screen that millions of shareholders are watching. And the pressure runs the other way too. The company's entire future, its satellite network, its contract to land NASA's astronauts back on the moon later this decade, depends on proving it can fly these ships over and over cheaply, which means it cannot put the catch off forever. So that is where this sits. The hardest recovery ever attempted, riding on engines that just failed, on tiles that can crack, into arms that allow no mistakes, by a company that now has every financial reason both to attempt it and to fear it. When they finally try, it will be one of the most watched 90 seconds in the history of spaceflight. And whether the ship settles softly into those arms, or comes down somewhere it should not, will say a great deal about who is really winning a race that another superpower is sprinting to catch up in. We will be watching for it.